The Mexican national soccer team has just achieved its first goal in this World Cup. The Mexican national team has just made it to the knockout stage of the World Cup, and they have just beaten South Korea 1 in the second match. Second victory. A perfect score so far for one of the hosts of this World Cup. Mexico beat South Korea 1 in Guadalajara on the second match day of Group A and ends up confirming their place in the next round. Mexico has secured its place in the round of 32 of this World Cup, of this new tournament. So let's start with this new reaction to this Mexican victory. Analyzing what this win by Aguirre's team has meant. Who with very little, with just a little, ends up taking the win and making it to the next round. Which ends up being, right? It ends up being, and it's still great news for all the Mexican people, for everyone, for all the fans of El Tri. So let's start with this new analysis here on Falso 9 TV. We invite you to leave a like, leave your comment, subscribe, and let's get started with this new win for El Tri. What needs to be said, first of all, about this new victory for the Mexican national team is that Mexico, even with just a little, still managed to get the win against a team like Korea, which had shown some very interesting things and had beaten the Czech Republic in the first match. In Guadalajara, they had shown a really positive image, and that had also earned them a victory in the first match. Mexico and Korea came into this match day with 3 points each, knowing that the truth is, a draw would have been comfortable for both of them. Honestly, a draw would have suited both teams, but they weren't satisfied with that. Mexico went for it. I think it was a match where both teams went for it. But if the match had ended in a draw, I think neither of them would have been bothered by it. Is there anything positive in all of this? Well, today, before the match between Mexico and Korea, the Czech Republic and South Africa drew 1-1. That means Mexico and South Korea came in knowing that in the next round, the team they would face hadn't won either of their first two matches. In other words, ninguno de los primeros dos partidos, se tranquilamente, they could be calm about it. They could have agreed to a draw. I think that even though they didn't actually settle for a draw, we're not talking about the Guadalajara Pact. What I believe is that they attacked each other timidly. I think Mexico showed a bit more initiative. And I think the Korean team showed a bit of that freshness you see in these Asian teams. These Asian teams aren't limited. It's not that they're not technically good with the ball, but there are concepts and there are some things that have to do with the nature of football that they don't fully understand. And there are some tricks that they don't quite get either. And this obviously has more to do with interpretation than anything else. The truth is that the South Korean national team didn't play a bad match, but a blunder by goalkeeper Kim ended up giving the victory to Mexico. He comes out to intercept the ball in the second half, but it stays in play after he collides with his teammate. This shows the cleverness and awareness, in front of goal, being a bit smart on the field, like shouting in the box so the goalkeeper can take the ball and the defender moves out of the way. Instead of that, the goalkeeper, I don't know if he didn't shout, but he made the wrong decision to go for the ball, even though he knew one of his teammates was in front of him. He ends up taking the ball and then ends up losing it. From there, Romo's goal comes and Mexico takes the lead in the second half. I have to say that despite this, the Korean team made things difficult for Mexico. In fact, if we look at the clear goal scoring chances, it ends up being even. I think there were two clear chances for each team. That's why I repeat, a draw wasn't a bad result, since it didn't hurt them either. And second, honestly, it was even fair for how the match played out. Now, in my experience with this kind of match, that's what ends up making the difference. That's what ends up giving Mexico the win. We have to highlight a great play by Edson Alvarez in the first clear goal opportunity of the match, where Hugh Minson was one-on-one, chipped the ball over Rangel, and Edson Alvarez cleared it with almost a bicycle kick. A key player for the Mexican national team. Honestly, in summary, there's not much more to add. The match didn't give us much more to analyze than all of this. Now, what I do have to say, after watching about 60% practically from this group stage that the Mexican national team has had in this World Cup, Mexico ends up winning its two matches well, being organized, trying not to make mistakes at the back. In fact, Mexico has barely been threatened at all. If we analyze it in the first two matches of the World Cup, the clear chances that Mexico's opponents have had have only been the ones from today. The truth is, we're talking about a team that is at least tactically and defensively organized and has a goalkeeper who delivers. Now, I don't know how much more this Mexican team can give to advance in the World Cup. I'm not sure how far this Mexican team can go. It really depends on the matchups. It will largely depend on the matchups. For example, one possible opponent is a third place team. Mexico, by facing one of the third place teams, will at least guarantee themselves an opponent that's not so tough in the first round. Now, once Mexico reaches the round of 16, I wouldn't bet on this team. I wouldn't bet on this team, not even in the round of 16, I'd say. The only doubt about this is that when facing a third place team, maybe they'll face a team just as weak as the ones they've been playing against in this group stage. The group was favorable for Mexico. For Mexico, even if maybe not all of Mexico's opponents are the weakest in the cup, it's still not a tough group. Mexico's group is not a difficult one. Now on the field, it's a different story. I think Mexico has three key players. One of them is the goalkeeper, Rangel. Another one of them, I think, wasn't there today, but I think it was Montes. Then in the midfield, I think Lira has been an important player. And up front, Quiñones. So Mexico has one key player per line. Mexico has one key player per line. Edson Alvarez performed well today, though he wasn't truly tested. But I think Mexico is just a collection of good players. Good players! But at the World Cup, they become just average. Just average. Why? Because you're at a World Cup with players who are stars, who are top players, who aren't stars yet, but have the potential to become stars. That's why Mexico has just average players. And I think, and this is something we have to acknowledge about the Mexican team, Mexico understands that without collective effort, without collective organization, they're not going to get anywhere. And that goes beyond any ego that any of the players in Mexico might have. Mexico has, I think, in terms of soccer, a leader who still hasn't quite given back to the team what he can offer, and I think that's Raul Jimenez. Raul Jimenez can contribute much more to this team. I think that Raul Jimenez, no matter what is said, that in the past he was injured, that in the last World Cup in Qatar, Qatar, he wasn't at the right level. He didn't live up to expectations. Raul Jimenez is the player with the most hierarchy on this team, along with Quiñones. Quiñones is in better physical shape, you can tell. Also, today Kim ended up blocking an incredible goal shot from Raul Jimenez in the second half, with the game already at 1-0. But, well, there's not much more. I think what Alvarado did is worth mentioning. He sent a very good cross for Quiñones to head in during the other clear chance Mexico had. Besides that, honestly, the goal chance, it's hard for me to really count it as a real scoring opportunity because, honestly, it was just a harmless cross where Mexico ended up finding the goal because of the goalkeeper. Kim's own mistake and his own inability, which is thanks to Romo's merit, the Mexico national team just reached the round of 16 and is the first team to secure a spot in the final phase. This is partly because they're in Group A, but they're the first to guarantee their place in the next round. We'll see what Mexico does, whether they end up going for first place. Let's remember that first place is not secured yet. It all depends on Mexico not losing to the Czech Republic and on South Korea, for example, doing the same against the South African team. But everything indicates that if there are no setbacks, if nothing unexpected happens, the Mexican team will at least finish the group stage in first place. I think this is also a bit of a reason that I believe Mexico can rely on. If Mexico gets eliminated in the next round, I have to say in favor of the Mexican team that they weren't given the easiest group. But it's a balanced group, because I think the group is balanced. Mexico's group, the group that Mexico got, is a balanced group. It's a balanced group. And even so, Mexico managed to come out on top. I think this is something that should be recognized as well, because we also have to set the bar for Mexico at the level of the team they have. Today, this Mexican team, really because of the players they have, and considering the rest of the teams in the World Cup, I think at most they can hope to reach the quarterfinals. I don't think this team can achieve much more because of individual talent and collective play. Today, Mexico had a really hard time creating chances against South Korea, which is still a team with good intentions. That's it, especially since their best player is already at a stage already advanced in his career, like Hyung Hyu Minson. But well, the Mexican national team has won. They've beaten South Korea 1-0, just barely, but they've beaten them and move on to the next round. I invite you to leave your like. I invite you to leave your comment, to subscribe, and we'll meet again for what will surely be not only the next match of the Mexican national team, but also the rest of this World Cup that you're watching here on Falso Nueve TV.